I don't know when you ever wear them, but if you were out looking at floodways, it would be a good idea to keep from getting arrested. I don't know where mine is right now. Let's see if this is better.
I'd like to call the May 7th, 2007 meeting of the Salina City Commission to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Jelka.
Here.
Commissioner Larson.
Here.
Commissioner Peck.
Here.
Commissioner Perney.
Here.
Commissioner Vanier.
Here. I'd like to invite you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
First item on today's agenda is the Citizens Forum. Time set aside for any citizen who would like to address the Commission on an item that is not on the regularly scheduled agenda. Is there anyone that wishes to come forward for that purpose? Seeing none, we'll move on to awards and proclamations.
Item 4.1, the week of May 13th through the 19th, 2007, as Police Week in the City of Salina. Lieutenant Sean Morton will read the proclamation.
Whereas the Congress and the President of the United States have designated May 15th as Police Officers Memorial Day and the week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week. And whereas the law enforcement officer are our guardian of life, property, defenders of individual right to be free, warriors in the war against crime, and dedicated to the preservation of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And whereas the City of Salina desires to honor the valor, service, and dedication of its own peace officers, 4 of whom have been killed in the line of duty since 1977. And whereas it is known that on average every 53 hours a law enforcement officer is killed in the line of duty somewhere in America and 339 officers are assaulted, our community joins with other cities and towns to honor all peace officers everywhere, and I, Alan E. Jilka, Mayor of the City of Salina, do hereby proclaim the week of May 13th to May 19th, 2007 to be Police Week and call upon all our citizens in this community to especially honor and show our sincere appreciation for the police officers of the city by deed, remark, and attitude. I call upon all our citizens to make every effort to express their thanks to our officers who make it possible for us to leave our homes and families in safety each day and to return to our homes knowing they are protected by officers willing to sacrifice their lives if necessary to guard our loved ones, property, and government against all who would violate the law. Signed the 7th day of May 2007 at the City of Salina, State of Kansas. In witness thereof, the seal and the signature of the city are affixed.
Thank you. Do you have anything planned to mark the observance here locally?
Yes, we do. On Tuesday, May 15th, we have our annual Law Enforcement Memorial at 8 a.m. at Jerry Ivy Park.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a copy of your proclamation.
Item 4.2, the week of May 6th through the 12th, 2007, as Building Safety Week in the City of Salina. Michael Roberts, building official, will read the proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Before I read this proclamation, I think it's important to make a couple of observations based on this weekend's tragic events. This proclamation will proclaim this week as Building Safety Week. Building codes are never going to evolve to a place where the damages that were observed in Greensburg this last weekend would have been prevented. However, we continually learn from these kinds of events, and the building codes continue to evolve to build structures that will withstand, will be safer from smaller wind events like this, the peripheral winds that are associated with tornadoes and thunderstorms. And so this proclamation of this safety week is still an important event as far as we're concerned, to promote the idea that building safety is important for our community and for our state. So with that said, I'd like to read the proclamation. Whereas through our continuing attention to building safer for everyday life and in times of disaster, we enjoy the comfort and peace of mind of structures that are safe and sound. And whereas building safety and fire prevention officials are at work year-round to guide the safe construction of buildings, and whereas the dedicated members of the International Code Council, including building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, and others in the construction industry, develop and enforce codes to safeguard Americans in the buildings where we live, work, play, and learn. And whereas the international codes, the most widely adopted building safety and fire prevention codes in the nation, are used by most U.S. cities, counties, and states, these modern building safety codes also include safeguards to protect the public from natural disasters that can occur, such as hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, wildland fires, and earthquakes. And whereas Building Safety Week, sponsored by the International Code Council Foundation, is an excellent opportunity to educate the public, it is a perfect time to increase public awareness of the role building safety and fire prevention officials, local and state building departments, and federal agencies play in protecting lives and property. And whereas this year's theme, Building Smarter for Disasters in Everyday Life, encourages all Americans to raise our awareness of building safety, everyone can take appropriate steps to ensure that the places where we live, work, play, and learn are safe. Countless lives have been saved because of the building safety codes adopted and enforced by local and state agencies. And whereas this year, as we observe Building Safety Week, we ask all Americans to consider projects to improve building safety at home and in the community, and to recognize the local building safety and fire prevention officials and the important role that they play in public safety. Now, therefore, it is hereby proclaimed that May 6th through May 12th, 2007 is Building Safety Week in Salina. Accordingly, our citizens are encouraged to join their fellow Americans in participating in Building Safety Week activities and assisting efforts to improve building safety. Signed and sealed this 7th day of May in the year 2007, Mayor Alan E. Jilka.
Thank you. I know you have a building authority meeting tomorrow. Is there any other special events to mark the week?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, the ICC has published information posters that proclaim Building Safety Week that we take advantage of having put up in the schools this time of the year to proclaim Building Safety Week. They also publish these pamphlets that we provide for the guidance counselors in the junior highs and the high schools to disseminate to the kids there about considering careers in code enforcement. I'd hoped to be on a little program on Access TV this week, but couldn't get scheduled in, so it's going to probably in a couple of weeks that I will be on Access TV to promote building safety with the chairman of our Building Advisory Board, and we will have a news release going to the press later this week.
Well, we recognize and appreciate the service you provide to the community. I have a copy of your proclamation. We have no public hearings and items scheduled for a certain time today, so we will continue on with the consent agenda.
Item 6.1, approve the minutes of April 23rd, 2007. Item 6.2, authorize purchase of a digital multifunctional copy machine from ImageQuest in the amount of $20,740. Item 6.3, approval of the change order number 3 for the Salina Soccer Complex Restroom Concession Building Project number 03-1399 in the amount of $9,375.
Is there any particular item an individual commissioner would like to pull off the consent agenda? There being none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve all 3 items of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion is to approve the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes 5-0. So we will now move on to development business.
Item 7.1, application number Z07-6, requesting a change in zoning district classification from R2 to PC1 on property addressed as 710, 714 through 716, and 718 East Iron Avenue. Sub-item 7.1A, first reading ordinance number 10387.
Mr. Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Commissioners, this application has been filed by the Salina County Dialysis Center, and that facility is located at southeast corner of Iron and Oakdale. And the original clinic at that location was built in 1984, and it was done as a conditional use in what was then an R2 multifamily residential district. After that was built in 1991, there was an amendment that changed what could be allowed and what could be expanded in an R2 district, and that allowed the dialysis center to remain in operation in an R2 district, but would not allow for any expansion. The dialysis center recently purchased 2 small dwellings that were located south of that clinic, and they have cleared that site with the idea towards expansion. And they filed this application to rezone 4 full lots at the corner of Oakdale and Iron, and for approval of a site plan for clinic addition. And so they want to create essentially a PC1 zone campus that would include the dialysis center, but would also include a duplex and a single-family dwelling owned by the dialysis center to the east of the existing clinic. The site plan that you have in your packet depicts about a 2,000 square foot addition that they would be building onto the south side of the existing dialysis center. That site plan also shows a parking layout and a circulation pattern. And what they're proposing to do is incorporate an alley that runs between the dialysis center property and Oakdale Plaza apartments, and incorporate that into the circulation within their parking lot. And the city's policy on use of alleys allows for that, but it requires that if you incorporate an alley into your parking lot, you have to pave that area just as your parking lot. We looked at the area with them and determined that because there are West Star poles within the alley, we couldn't get a full 20 feet width of paving for two-way traffic. So what is being proposed is to pave the alley, but to convert it from two-way to one-way going east. Along with that, and you can see it in the right-hand side of the photo, the Oakdale Plaza apartments there has been experiencing a shortage of parking, and they are extremely tight and landlocked, and they are looking at cooperating with the dialysis center on the pavement of the alley and adding some spaces off of the alley north of the building. And looking at the suitability of this property for continued R2 zoning, clearly leaving it zoned R2 would inhibit the dialysis center's ability to expand and upgrade their facility. The PC1 zoning would be compatible with what you see around the area, particularly the northwest corner of Oakdale and Iron. And the comprehensive plan supports commercial office development in this location, so the PC1 zoning would be consistent with that. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this request. That public hearing also included the opportunity to comment on converting the alley to one-way. Neither staff or the Planning Commission received any comments from any nearby owners about conversion of the alley to one-way. And at the close of the hearing, the Planning Commission recommended unanimously approval of this request and the site plan that you see in front of you, subject to 5 conditions, one of which would require the paving of that alley south of the dialysis center. So this comes to you with a recommendation for approval, and if you concur with that, the attached ordinance reflects the recommendation of the Planning Commission. With that, I'd be happy to address any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Andrew?
Dean, the entire alley doesn't have to be paved, does it?
Well, we discussed essentially paving it to the edge of their property, and not,
Okay.
that's really their obligation.
Okay.
I think if you look at the minutes, we might want to check with Mr. Truelove. We had this, there was discussion about taking it on from here all the way over to Penn, but the obligation that they have is to take it to their east property line. If they want to continue that, that would be voluntary on their part, but we would not, this recommendation does not necessarily require that, because they're only obligated to go to their east property line.
Okay, thanks.
You make a statement on the front page of our information packet that non-conforming uses can continue to operate indefinitely, but they cannot be expanded or enlarged. Are we opening ourselves up to any
Well,
bad
that was the
precedents?
purpose of going to, the C1 zoning is certainly much more appropriate for a medical clinic like this, and most of our similar facilities have C1 zoning. It's just this was done at a time when you could, by conditional use, put these types of uses in residential zoning. So it would really be the appropriate thing for their future flexibility to make it a commercial zone.
And the commercial zone includes the duplex and the home, so that at some future date, conceivably, there could be an additional expansion without another rezoning, but they'd have to revisit the
That's
site plan
correct
approval.
But
Okay.
those can continue to be used as residential dwellings, and the only catch with that, what the Planning Commission tried to address, is that the parking for those dwellings is in the parking lot for the dialysis center, so they're kind of wedded
Mark-
together. Yeah,
Okay. But they're all under one ownership,
right.
too.
They're under one ownership.
Any additional questions of staff? Seeing none, I'd invite any public comment. There being none, we'll bring it back to the commission.
Mayor Jelka, I'd move for approval of ordinance 07-10387, approving application Z07-6 to change the zoning classification from R2 to PC1.
Second. Motion is to approve ordinance 07-10387, providing for zoning changes on property 710, 714, 16, and 18 East Iron Avenue. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. That passes 5-0. We will now move on to items of administration.
Item 8.1, second reading ordinance number 07-10379, providing change in zoning district classification from C3 to C5 on property address as 1513 South 9th Street.
This passed on first reading April 23rd, and since that time we've had no comments received. Is there any additional comment here today? Being none, I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor Jelka, I'd move that ordinance number 07-10379, providing for a zoning change from C3 to C5 on South 9th Street, be approved on second reading.
Second.
Motion is to approve ordinance 07-10379 on second reading, providing for zoning change at 1513 South 9th Street. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Larson?
Aye.
Commissioner Peck?
Aye.
Commissioner Perney?
Aye.
Commissioner Vanier?
Aye.
Mayor Jilka?
No. That passes 4-1 with Joka dissenting.
Item 8.2, second reading ordinance number 07-10386, amending Chapter 42 of the Salina Code by amending the definition of junkyard and adding sections of related definitions.
This likewise passed on first reading April 23rd, and we've had no additional comments. I'd entertain any if they are here today. There being none, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Mayor, I'd move for adoption of ordinance 07-10379 on second reading.
second. Oh, is that the right?
I think
it's
that's not the right order.
386. Yeah.
It's 10386. Correct? 07-10386.
You've got two different numbers down on your blue sheet there.
Oh, yeah, because it says 79.
Oh, that's right.
Make up your mind.
86.
86.
Okay, Mayor, I would move for adoption of ordinance 07-10386 on second reading.
Second.
Motion is to approve ordinance 07-10386, amending chapter 42 of the Salina Code by amending the definition of junkyard and adding sections for related definitions. Will clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Larson?
Aye.
Commissioner Peck?
Aye.
Commissioner Perney?
Aye.
Commissioner Vanier?
Aye.
Mayor Joka?
Aye. That passes 5-0.
Item 8.3, Salina Code, Chapter 8 Amendments, Sub-Item 8.3A, First Reading Ordinance Number 07-10388, amending Chapter 8, Article 2, Section 8-163, pertaining to the Building Advisory Board membership. Sub-Item 8.3B, First Reading Ordinance Number 07-10389, amending Chapter 8, Article 1, Division 3 by adding Section 8-78.5, amending Section 408.2 of the Uniform Plumbing Code pertaining to the requirements for finished installation of certain plumbing fixtures.
Mr. Roberts?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. This first item relating to the Building Advisory Board became needful because of the recent changes that were made to the contractor licensing provisions. The previous membership requirements for the Building Advisory Board included a home building contractor and a commercial building contractor. Those terminologies have now become antiquated because of our new licensing provisions. So we discussed this with the board, and they recommended revising the language to create one seat for an A or B contractor and another seat for a B or C contractor. They also, in their discussions, elected to change the requirements. There was previously a requirement for one seat for an architect and another seat for a structural engineer. The board felt like limiting that seat for engineers to just structural engineers or mechanical engineers wasn't really appropriate, so they agreed to drop the designation of the specialized engineer and just make it an engineer, and allow that either seat could be held by an architect or an engineer. And as an illustration of the need for that, we presently have an opening for an architect on the Building Advisory Board, and we haven't had any expressions of interest from any of our local design professionals to fill that seat. By changing this, amending this requirement, that would open that seat up to perhaps some other design professionals that might be interested in serving our community in that capacity. The second ordinance that we've proposed for you is an issue that was recently heard by the Building Advisory Board. This comes to you as a recommendation from them. There was some concern expressed by the Salina home builders regarding a requirement in the Uniform Plumbing Code for sealing water closets to the floor in residential uses. And so we met with our local trade groups in our quarterly meetings and discussed that, brought that forward to the Building Advisory Board for them to hear on that matter. And after a lot of discussion, the group determined that it would be reasonable to create an exception in the plumbing code for that particular item as it relates to residences, not across the board as it relates to commercial or industrial applications, but simply to 1- and 2-family dwellings. And that said, they recommended this exception be created in the Uniform Plumbing Code to address that need. With that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have regarding either one of these issues at this time.
Questions, Mr. Roberts?
Does changing this after this change is made, if it's approved, you could basically have 2 engineers of any type on here, and I'm wondering, does that dilute the intent of your membership to this Building Advisory Board?
There was a lot of discussion concerning that. However, the board felt like that it might be better to have a couple of design professionals actually on the board rather than have a vacant seat on the board for an extended period of time, and keeping our membership numbers up. One of the things, as with all boards serving on a voluntary basis, one of the issues you have to deal with is attendance, and trying to keep enough board members present to keep a quorum at each month's meeting. And so this was an attempt to try and address that issue by opening up the pool of possible membership candidates to a broader spectrum of folks so that we could keep those seats filled.
You say you have no expression of interest from any architects, local architects. Do you have a pile of them from engineers? Do you have a pile of expression of interest forms from engineers? You said you had none from architects.
We don't, but however, without this exception, we wouldn't have had any submittals of interest of expression from engineers that were electrical engineers or civil engineers, because they wouldn't have been qualified to sit on the board anyway. Hopefully, by opening this up to engineers from all of the disciplines, that might encourage more individuals. As a matter of fact, I know of one electrical engineer that's expressed an interest for a number of years to be on the board, but could never serve because he never fit in one of these categories that we have designated here on the existing list.
I'm just a little concerned that we'd get top-heavy on engineers with no architects represented on there, and I realize that it's their choice whether they want to be or not, but
Any additional questions, Mr. Roberts? Seeing none, thank you. I'll invite any public comment. There being none, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Does this need to be one motion or two? Since it's two ordinances. Okay. Well, I'd move that ordinance number 07-10388, amending Chapter 8, Article 2, Section 8-163 of the Salina Code pertaining to the Building Advisory Board membership be approved as presented.
Second. Motion is to approve ordinance 07-10388, making some changes to the Building Advisory Board membership. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. That passes 5-0.
Follow up and say we approve ordinance number 07-10388 concerning certain plumbing fixtures.
89.
89.
There's another misprint on
There's
there.
another one. By reading the too far into the blue sheet, there's typos. Excuse me, all the pieces. 389.
I'll second that.
That motion is to approve ordinance 07-10389, making a small change pertaining to the requirements for finished installation of certain plumbing fixtures. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes 5-0.
Item 8.4, resolution number 076391, authorizing the intention to convey title of real estate to the Salina Community Theater Association.
Mr. Gage?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. The Salina Community Theater Association has operated out of their current theater building since its construction in 1972. They've been under an operation and maintenance agreement with the city since about that time. Over that time, they've been recognized as one of the top 1% community theaters nationally, which is quite a recognition. The original building was constructed on privately donated land with private funding. What the SCTA is going to do is they're planning the stages for the development of a major theater expansion project, which is pretty exciting. This was first introduced to the Commission in June of last year in the study session. Basically, what they're planning to do is add a black box theater, add classroom space, additional rehearsal areas, dressing rooms, an expanded lobby and box office, concession area, office, and meeting rooms. What they're requesting is that the current building and related property be conveyed to them in order to best explore private grant opportunities for the expansion project. The grant opportunities require that the property and building be in the ownership of that be in their name. So as a result, we provided for your consideration a resolution of intent regarding the future conveyance of the property and building for this purpose. The resolution of intent is not a binding action. That'll come later in the process, but what it does do at this time is it outlines the intent of the City Commission to work directly with our Salina Community Theater folks to assist them in making this project a reality. The primary components of the resolution intent are as follows. First, that they would complete preliminary architectural building design plans, a site plan, and survey the property. There would be formal consideration by the City Commission to convey the building and property to the SCTA. This would allow them then to submit for private grant funding. They would then commence final architectural building plans and a final site plan. They would then submit an application to the city for a property replat and probably a planned development district zoning of the site. We believe that that's in the best interest with the different properties in there. Completion by SCTA of building and site design plans for city consideration, construction of the theater expansion project, and the inclusion of related deed covenants. Some of the deed covenants, for example, would include that the SCTA could not mortgage, sell, or lease the theater or real estate without written consent of the city. Unless otherwise agreed by both parties, title of the building and property would be transferred back to the city if SCTA does not proceed with the expansion project or is unable to complete it by December 31st of 2012. We really talked about the time frame in order to do that, and we anticipate it's one of those things that if they're moving along and they're close, there's absolutely no reason that we wouldn't extend that timeline. If the SCTA discontinues operation of the theater as a community theater, the city is granted the first option to purchase the theater by either assuming or paying off the outstanding financial obligations. So obviously, their interest, and it makes sense, is that they want to make sure if there are any debt obligations at that time that they are taken care of. Upon transfer, and the next one, there's a change in the next bullet point just by virtue of the final version of the agreement. But upon transfer of title of the theater property, the City Commission will consider an amended maintenance and operations agreement that would be very similar to the version we already have in place. All the development activities mentioned will be at the cost of the SCTA. Staff would work very closely with them. The final plat would also take in consideration the adjacent park property right next to the river, as well as river access. Your staff believes that this resolution of intent is pretty consistent with the ongoing arrangement that the city has had with our community theater partners. It also communicates to them the city's desire to assist them in completing this expansion project for the betterment of our community. We think when we looked at our strategic plan, that really hits two of the goals. Goal number 3, which deals with the quality of services. I don't think there's any question that if they can make this vision a reality, it'll increase the quality of that particular service in our community. And then secondarily, the city would maintain a commitment to making downtown Salina a thriving and vibrant center, and we believe the community theater certainly helps to do that. As I mentioned, we do believe this would help fulfill their vision and really get them off to a good start, help them improve an already outstanding community service, and reinforce our downtown as a destination. We provided a couple alternatives. One is to approve the resolution that's provided. The other would be not to approve it at this time. At this time, there's no direct fiscal impact of this action. Staff recommends alternative 1. Be happy to answer any questions, and I know we have representatives from the Salina Community Theater Association that could also answer maybe more specific questions about the project if you have them.
Any questions, Mr. Gage?
What is our agreement with them as far as operations? We pay all their utilities, is that correct?
Commissioner, let's see. We have a copy of the current one. I'm going to sort of scan down this. Okay. Yeah, you should have this also at your place. It's been handed out there. I'll try to scan down this with you. Let's see. Yeah, if you'll check paragraphs 3 and 4, And this goes back to the end of the construction of the building. The city, it says, shall accept the building at its own expense and maintain and keep the exterior of the building in all of Area 1, which is a particular area in there, in a good state of repair. So basically maintenance, furnish utilities for the entire building, provide janitorial services for Area 1, and pay all taxes and insurance on the entire building. The city shall at all times bear the risk of loss of the building, and shall at all times maintain fire and extended coverage insurance on the building in an amount equal to 80% of its then current value. And then if in the event of total destruction of the or damage beyond repair, the proceeds of such insurance shall be applied toward the replacement cost of a similar building. And then it mentions their obligations. They will have use of those parts of the building designated in Area 1 during the period of this. Such use of that area, let's see, by the theater shall not exceed 120 days in any calendar year. During the periods that Area 1 is being used by the city, by the theater, the city, its agencies, and its permittees may make such use of that area as the Board of Directors of the theater determines will not conflict with the theater's use of that area. And at all other times, the city, its agencies, and permittees shall have the use of that area. So basically, the maintenance of a good part of the area and repair. We also have, in practice, provided maintenance of the site outside with regards to removal of snow, with regards to landscaping and maintenance of the grass area outside. So what we would be looking at would be, and we'll, in a later step, we'll provide an updated maintenance and operations agreement, but it'll be fairly similar to the type of scope that you see in this agreement here.
What are their plans for the size of this?
Might have someone, Michael Spicer, the executive director, is here, and I think he can address that question very well.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We currently have 3 architectural plans in front of us. Once we get to the stage that this resolution is passed, we will then make an architect selection, and when we have more specific architectural plans, we'll have a better idea of the size of that space. We have everything right now in front of us from 12,000 square feet to 27,000 square feet. Possibly in front of us for the expansion. That 27,000 square feet also includes a secondary level below the main lobby for storage and rehearsal, as well as support areas in the lobby and extra classroom support space and office space on the main level. Boardroom on a second level above the lobby, and further support spaces above the lobby. That's the largest of the 3 plans that we have in front of us right now.
Do we do the same thing with the Art Center?
It's similar. We do provide custodial services for the Art Center. We have provided repair and some maintenance type activities. I'd have to go back and look at their agreement. It's not identical, but it's very similar.
The other support agreement that we're talking about in the future was modeled substantially on the existing Art Center agreement, and actually with discussions with Steve Snyder and Greg and Rod Broberg, we've made a couple of adjustments which we think are more expeditious than the current Art Center agreement.
And Commissioners, you do have one of the 3 documents that was put up in front of you right before the meeting, so I know you haven't had time to look at it, but one of them's entitled Exhibit A, and what this is basically what we would call a final draft of what that maintenance and operating agreement will look like. I would bring your attention on page 2 a couple things. There's SETA duties, which is Section 1. And one of the differences from the current arrangement is that they would pay annually $3,000 to the city for maintenance responsibilities. They would then take on the capital improvements under the provision, they meaning SCTA. They will also maintain insurance coverage and all personal property and general liability coverage in agreed upon amounts. In addition, they have builder's risk coverage during the construction project. And then under Section 2, city duties, the city would provide the utilities, the cost of utilities for the building, routine janitorial services, and then basically maintenance, repair, and replacement of plumbing fixtures, and other general items that you would maintain, air conditioning, heating, electrical systems, roof, marquee, and other items related to the structure. In addition, we have, and the old agreement doesn't address the site, although in practice we have actually provided that service for years, but it is clarified in this agreement. Includes landscaping around the theater, snow removal from sidewalks and parking areas, and then the city would provide a commercial property insurance rated at replacement value on the existing theater and any future building additions or improvements that are owned by SCTA, and that's the basic responsibilities under what would be the new maintenance and operating agreement.
Well, I know the agreement with the Arts Center kind of became somewhat convoluted, and there was a lot of misunderstandings and things like that, so I hope that in final form it's much more defined on what the city will do, what the community theater will do, and so it's very clear when we're gone that everyone will know 20 years from now.
Yeah, I think so. Some of the agreements, the language, such as the original one we have with the community theater, are pretty old, and we do run into questions from time to time on the intent of some of the language. The last issue I recall on the Arts Center had to do with a piece of, or had to do with the HVAC system.
Humidification.
Might have been, yeah, humidification, and there was the question there had to do basically, was it a general building item or specific to like a gallery type issue? And that was really the only question that I've known in the last couple of years on that. So, but I think this will really help us with the community theater to lay out those responsibilities, and I think should be pretty clear.
And in discussions of the support agreement, one of the issues that came up was sometimes the lack of clarity with the Arts Center, and we wanted to streamline that and make it a more efficient document so that by giving the city an amount of money every year, essentially purchasing a maintenance agreement from the city, that would be clarified, and it's not a matter of us putting an amount in escrow on an annual basis that would be used and determined at a later date if something major went wrong. This purchase agreement would come directly to, this amount of money would come directly to the city in support of that maintenance agreement.
Okay.
When this is all done, is there going to still be a separate entity as Founders Park, or in a way it really doesn't make any difference if we're going to do all the exterior maintenance, or is all that parkland, including the little overlook over the river, going to be part of the site of the community theater?
Yeah, the final plat should address, our intention is the final plat will address the area that's known as Founders Park, and possibly even a strip along the river with kind of in line with the strategic planning of looking at possibly trails and access to the river in the long-term future.
Okay. So it'll be a complex little legal description once this is worked out where the property line is going to fall. Okay.
I'm also curious, with the Arts Center expanding to their warehouse over on, I believe, 4th Street, can we expect another one of these from them?
That's a good question. We haven't been approached. I can't speak for them, but we haven't been approached related to that.
Okay.
Any additional questions? I've got one as a new member here. I'm trying to understand how is it that we come to agreements like this with certain nonprofits and not others, for instance?
I think a lot of these go back to what I believe has been a very strong relationship between the city and in this particular case, these are the Arts Center we're talking about, the community theater, and even our role that we have had with the Stiefel Theater in the past are related to partnerships within the cultural community that we've had for really 30 years. And I think part of it is we've seen in many communities, you have these cultural activities and organizations, depending on private fundraising abilities, some do well, but it's sort of an upswing and then a downswing, and sometimes they aren't even able to stay in business. And I think at some point in the past, the city must have had that conversation that said, what can we do to stabilize and always keep those cultural influences in our community? And I think these agreements really basically came out of that. So it's really in order to provide some stability in our cultural activities in our community for services that we don't necessarily directly offer, but depending on what community you go to, they very well could. But we feel it's a way to complement and provide that stability.
Commissioner Peck. Also, the agreement that was drafted so long ago with Salina Community Theater has become a model for a lot of other municipalities to support the arts. On the back end, please keep in mind that the support that we get from the city is paid back many-fold over, not only in terms of the quality of life we bring, but in terms of direct economic impact. 97% of the $650,000 budget of Salina Community Theater is spent in Salina and Saline County. The only part that's regularly spent anywhere else is for either esoteric equipment that's not available here or on an annual basis royalties for the plays that we do, but everything else stays here. So we feel that the economic benefits to the community are substantial for the support that we get, and that support from the city has enabled Salina Community Theater to stay on such a significant footing since 1972.
I certainly, just a comment on that, I certainly don't question the value that you guys bring to the community. I just wondered if this was a new precedent that was being set, or if there was anything that had come before this. So
yeah, it's pretty consistent with how we've really supported our cultural community in the past.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Spicer. Any additional public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I'd move we authorize a resolution 076391 of intent to convey title of real estate to the Salina Community Theater Association.
second.
Motion is to approve Resolution 07-6391, authorizing the intention to convey title of real estate to the Salina Community Theater Association. Quick comment before we vote. I don't know if Mr. Stewart wandered in here today as an interested citizen or as representing the community theater, but I noticed your signature on this document dated January 12th, 1970, and this certainly was an excellent model that brought a lot of good things to our community.
Yes, I have been involved. I'm Jack Stewart. I have been involved in that matter for some time, since the agreement was January 12, 1970.
You being the attorney, you might have
And
helped write it.
that was, so I have, yes, I've been involved with this a long time, and I just came down today to see what's going on.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
I will say this, that the idea of this agreement of January 1970 was a joint venture agreement between the theater and the city, and to my knowledge, the first of its kind anywhere, and I think the parties have performed remarkably, and they've gotten along very well, and I favor continuation along that line. Thank you.
All in favor of the agreement signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes 5-0.
Item 8.5, approve the return of remaining privately raised funds for the Smoky Hill Museum Gallery renovation remodeling, project number 04-1506.
Mr. Hyken?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I've asked Susan Hawksworth, who is the director of the museum and also was a project manager, to make the presentation, if that's okay.
Item, the Friends of the Smoky Hill Museum Board of Directors request the item of the remaining funds to the Friends of the Smoky Hill Museum Incorporated. The background, the Friends of the Smoky Hill Museum Incorporated, along with the museum staff, successfully raised private funds for a gallery renovation project which involved a major upgrade of the city-owned Smoky Hill Museum facility. In November of 2004, Mike Morgan, then the deputy city manager, and the board of the director of the Friends of the Smoky Hill Museum decided that money raised for the renovation would be transferred to the city for fiscal management of the project. Those funds were transferred to the city accounts December 28, 2004. The city financial department administered the funds for the project from that time forward. Additionally, all funds raised by the Friends of the Smoky Hill Museum after December 2004 were transferred directly to the City of Salina. The first major expenditure for the project after the city took over administration was the award of the construction of the museum gallery renovation remodeling. It was authorized by City Commission on February 7, 2007. The final expenditure for the project was paid this year on April 12th. Through good project and fiscal management by the city and Friends staff, an excess of money remains in the project fund. Now that the project expenses are officially complete, the Friends of the Smoky Hill Museum Board of Directors is requesting the return of the remaining funds raised for the gallery renovation project. The Friends of Smoky Hill Museum recognize the importance of using these funds within the spirit in which the donations were made. All monies transferred to the City of Salina for the Smoky Hill Museum Gallery Renovation Project were raised privately through the Friends of the Smoky Hill Museum. The monies were placed and administered in a separate gallery renovation account by the City Finance Department, and at no time were any city tax dollars placed in the gallery renovation account. The beginning balance transferred to the city in 2004 was $864,052. The transfer total raised by the Friends of the Smoky Hill Museum and placed in the city account was $515,228.49, and the ending balance following the project completion of the project is $77,424. Guided by the responsibility of utilizing funds donated specifically to support the renovation of the museum gallery, the Friends of the Smoky Hill Museum Board of Directors approved the following plans for the remaining funds. The majority of the balance at $53,224 is to go to an endowment, to set up an endowment with the Greater Salina Community Foundation. $12,000 will be transferred to the Friends of the Smoky Hill Museum store to update fixtures and restock the store to reflect the new gallery exhibits, and $12,000 to be retained by the Friends of the Smoky Hill Museum to restore operational expenses depleted during the renovation process. The Friends of the Smoky Hill Museum support the museum in all of its endeavors and share the city's strategic plan and shared vision statement for the community. Specifically, that Salina will be supportive of lifelong learning through all forms of education, and Salina will be a town that is respectful of its heritage. It is recommended that the City Commission approve and return $77,424 privately raised monies for project number 041506 to the Friends of the Smoky Hill Museum Incorporated. I'm willing to take any questions, and we also have the past president, who was the sitting president at the time of the majority of the project, Joyce Volk.
Any questions?
The $12,000 that's going back to restore operational expenses, who paid those operational expenses the first time around?
The Friends of the Smoky Hill Museum Board. During the time of the project, their reserves were depleted quite a lot because the focus was put on the gallery renovation and not as much onto the general Friends operations that typically go on during
and so your donors are comfortable with the money raised going to pay expenses and not the project?
At this point, we haven't had any comment. That's one of the reasons we wanted to come to the commission to give that as well, and Joyce can also answer that.
And are we questioning the $12,000 to the Friends? What happened is we had elected to keep the store open during the renovation when the museum was closed. We felt it was important that some feature of the museum remain open for informational purposes for our Friends members. That cost us a tremendous amount of money because obviously the store wasn't making any money during that time. And as you know, the city cannot operate a retail business, so the Friends of the Smoky Hill Museum operate that retail gift store. And it also enhances our ability for our museum accreditation. So that's why we continue it. It is a struggle for a board of directors to operate a gift store. And we're not all experts at it, but we do the best that we can. And what had happened during the renovation project and the fundraising is there was some confusion that we had not anticipated from donors. They were donating to the gallery renovation project but dropped their Friends memberships. And so therefore, the money coming into the Friends organization dived considerably. And since the store wasn't making any money, we depleted our CDs and such to pay the store staff to keep that store open and to buy inventory and keeping it somewhat operational.
And our city attorney says that's legal?
When you say legal, Commissioner,
I'm curious how this flow of money, I don't want to
Oh, I understand.
cross any barriers here.
I don't think there's a problem. Both Mr. Franz and I were advised of the anticipated, of the proposal, and did not think that there was any, given that it was the contributed dollars and simply the return of the contributed dollars, that was a matter that was within the discretion of the commission.
Okay.
We thought it was best that since the building was city-owned, that the money raised should be turned over to the city for good fiscal management, and so that all the guidelines were followed, so because the building did belong to the city and everything we were doing to it would eventually become city property.
On the heels of what Commissioner Vanier just said, the Friends members do know that money is going to be used for these operating expenses, and they were okay?
It was a big point of contention, not contention, but we had a lot of discussions about what would we do with the money, what's the most responsible thing to do with the funds. The biggest bulk of it is going to the Greater Salina Community Foundation, and we will meet with them to get the endowment set up as far as what the stipulations will be on the interest that is accrued from that. But yes, the board and most Friends would be perfectly understanding we have got to reshore up these two organizations that suffered during the renovation. The renovation was a wonderful thing, but we suffered during that 6-7 months that the museum was closed.
I think it's also important to note that the Friends are a 501c3 organization, so they are a nonprofit, tax-exempt organization as well.
And how many paid staff are in the store?
There are 2 paid staff in the store, and then the Friends of the museum have 1 paid staff member as well.
So the Friends, we actually have 3 part-time employees that we also support.
So none of them are volunteers, they're paid?
No, they're all paid, because we're asking them to operate a business, and we
Mm-hmm.
can't get volunteers to operate a business.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any additional questions? Thank you, ladies. I'd invite any public comment, if there is any. Seeing none, we'll bring back to the commission.
Mayor, this is a unique situation. You seldom see a joint venture project like this come out with more fundraising than was absolutely necessary by a pretty good margin, and I think it's a very sensible proposed reuse of the funds, so I would move that the resolution, what is the number of this resolution? Here we go again, trying to find the resolution number. I move that the City Commission approve the return of $77,424 privately raised monies for project number 04-1506 to the Friends of the Smoky Hill Museum, Inc.
Second.
Motion is to approve the return of the remaining privately raised funds for the museum gallery renovation project in the amounts outlined. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. That passes 5-0.
Item 8.6, authorize an agreement for relocation of utility lines on South Ohio Street.
Mr. Place?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. On February 12th of this year, the City Commission entered into an agreement with the Kansas Department of Transportation for financing of South Ohio. In a nutshell, KDOT is responsible for 80% of construction costs up to a maximum participation amount of $3 million. The city's portion is then 20% of that, and then 100% once KDOT would reach its max of $3 million. Also, the city is responsible for 100% of engineering, right-of-way, and utility adjustments. This agreement with Westar Energy is part of the utility adjustments for the project and is 100% financed by the city due to a 1956 utility easement purchased by Westar and required for their transmission lines. Since that time, these lines are now considered distribution, but the easement still remains. The cost breakdown for Westar's utility relocation is attached to your packet. This list describes all elements of the project necessary to allow construction for the roadway improvements to begin. This proposed fee is $249,000. The local share of this project is to come from general obligation bond proceeds. Current estimates project that KDOT's share of the cost to be close to $2.8 million. Your sheet says that the city's share is estimated to be $650,000. In my estimates of the project, that is incorrect. With the estimate of $2.8 million for construction, that puts our participation about $560,000 just for construction. Engineering is around $220,000. Right of way is yet to be determined. It is close. We're estimating right around $200,000, and utilities, the $250,000 as shown here, which puts us right up around $1.23 million. I've spoken with Mr. Franz about this. He said that although this is not ideal, it is also not uncommon for estimates to be need to be adjusted once the project comes to construction. With that, the Engineering Division recommends that the City Commission approve the contract with Westar Energy for relocation of utility lines to a designated location within the new and existing right-of-way on South Ohio Street from Schilling Road to Magnolia Road in the amount of $249,000. Greg Jackson with Westar is here also, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioners, real quick too, if my memory serves me correctly, the part of that cost, or maybe possibly all of that's going to be related to the addition of the 10-foot wide hike bike sidewalk. That would be part
Correct.
of this project.
Yes.
So it's at least probably $230,000.
For
As far as just the total project impact of that addition to the project, I can't recall what the estimate was for that, but it sounds like I recall it somewhere in that margin.
I don't recall.
Did you just say if we did not have the bike path, we would not have to move the power lines, and this whole $250,000 would not be necessary?
No.
Okay, I heard
I'm
that
talking
wrong.
about the
Okay.
total cost. Carlton mentioned that we initially had estimated about $1 million from the city, and now it's about 1.23 when we basically figure in everything that we think we'll have on this project. Just sort of a reminder to you that that's probably overall pretty close before we added the concrete hike bike sidewalk to this project. Pretty well get you back to where you were with your other number, and so in essence that kind of trues it up. But just wanted to remind you of that, so when you look at this, you don't say, "Oh, well, I thought that was less before, and now it's more. What's the difference?" Well, that's going to make up a good part of that difference.
These will all be relocated above ground?
Correct.
I know this probably predated you, Mr. Place, but at one point we had some discussion about burying those lines. What, I forget, was that cost prohibitive or what?
I think you're going to find it will be. Mr. Jackson with Westar might be better able to address roughly what that number might be to Barry.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Mayor. Greg Jackson with Westar Energy. And the question about going underground, it was discussed. We looked into it. The cost was much, much higher. The other thing is considering the voltage we're working with on one of the circuits, it's a 34,500 volt line as compared to our typical distribution line. So that would have made the cost much, much higher. I would say probably in the neighborhood of 4 to 5 times as much as the $249,000.
Okay.
By the time you get all the switch gears and everything in for the 2 different voltages at 2 separate main circuits.
Okay.
One other question, then. There will not be a hedgerow underneath the line when it's relocated, is that
That's
correct?
up to the city.
Oh, okay.
If they want to
But it's not
move it
included.
over, that would-
Okay, restoration of hedgerow is not in this 249,000. Okay.
One thing, too, Commissioners, it might be helpful for you to know. Typically, within our roadways, you'll find we'll use the phrase right-of-way. And when we say right-of-way, that's property that's generally wider than the street that we own, which you would find the street, sidewalks, and most of the time utilities. In this particular case, we did not have right-of-way of the adequate width. And way back many, many years, when Westar needed to put that line in, they worked with the private property owners and obtained easement. Easement, the property underneath it is owned by the private property owners, and the easement provides them with the legal right to have their utilities there. When it's easement, that's why we're paying for the relocation today. If it was actually in right-of-way, we would not be paying for the relocation. The utility has to fund that on their own. So that's sort of the difference between right-of-way and easement and the funding obligations for relocation of utility.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, I'd entertain any public comment. There being none, bring it back to the commission.
Mayor, I would move that the city commission approve a contract with Westar Energy for the relocation of utility lines to this designated location within the new and existing right-of-way on South Ohio Street from Schilling Road to Magnolia in the amount of $249,000.
Second.
Motion is to authorize an agreement for the relocation of utility lines on South Ohio Street with Westar Energy in the amount of $249,000. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. That passes 5-0. The next item is Mayor Board appointments. I don't have a list of those with me. Does somebody have those? Okay. The mayor will be on the Chamber Board, the Economic Development Executive Committee, the Library Board, and the Salina Economic Development Incentives Council. Commissioner Larson will be on the Convention and Tourism Board and the City County Board of Health. Commissioner Peck will be on the City County Board of Health and the Building Authority. Commissioner Perney will be on the Housing Authority, the Airport Authority, and the North Central Regional Planning Commission. And Commissioner Vanier will be on the Arts and Humanities Commission and the Building Authority. I think that's just a matter of announcing them. There's no vote or anything, right? Yeah. No. Okay.
You're correct, Mayor, on the
Okay.
vote. Appointments.
Any additional items?
I have a couple real quick. One is we had a press conference at 2 o'clock this afternoon with all the local government entities that are involved in assisting the public related to the flooding that we've had in parts of our community as a result of all the water. What I wanted to tell the public is that this press conference will be shown on Community Access Television, which is cable channel 21, at the top of each hour through the rest of the evening until 10 o'clock today. So for those who are watching now, they can tune in and learn a little bit more about what's going on related to that, and some instructions that are provided to the public related to that as well. The second item is request to enter an executive session for, we hope, 10 minutes. We do not anticipate any action out here after that executive session.
Mayor Jilk, I move that the City Commission recess into executive session for 10 minutes to discuss matters subject to the attorney-client privilege for the reason that public discussion would waive that privilege, and reconvene in this room at 5:20.
Second.
Motion to move into executive session for 10 minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Greenberg, unfortunately.